In this video, we are going to discuss introduction to the literature review process and what is meant by literature review and how we can conduct literature review with focusing on important terms and classification of literature. Literature review is defined as reading, revision, analyzing, paraphrasing, and presenting the previous literature relevant to the research topic selected by the researcher or the investigator. In other words, it is a process rather than it's a simple reviewing the different sources of literature, whether textbook or encyclopedia or else, whatever else. But it is a process in the sense that you start with reading, in-depth reading, revision, reviewing, carrying out some sort of analysis, and then paraphrasing, and then eventually presenting it in the chapter, whether in proposal, for example, in the background or the introduction, or a separate chapter in final thesis, or in the discussion if you are discussing your results in an article or in a thesis. So it is a process, and that thus it's expected that the researcher should spend fair time reviewing the various reading materials, such as textbook, journal articles, encyclopedia, research work, internet websites, and other bibliography databases, and so on and so forth. So there are so many different sources that can be used for literature review. The other aspect is that conduct of literature review is a mean of demonstrating the author's knowledge about particular field study, including vocabulary, theories, key variables, phenomena, and species and history. This is very important because it is something that is comprehensive. You go over the topic and you try your best as investigator to carry some sort of in-depth understanding of the research topic and mastering exactly all different dimensions of the topic. Conduct of literature review also informs that the student or the candidate or the investigator come to know who are the prominent figure in the field, who are the research groups that have upper hand in publication of articles and in publishing textbook, for example, or conduct important research work relevant to the topic. The other thing we have to understand that literature review is not mechanical, in the sense that it is not something mechanical. For example, if you are using a search engine, it's not simply that you cut and paste the literature like this. It's not mechanical collection of the literature, but rather understanding, analyzing the reading materials. As I have mentioned, that it is a process. You need to conduct it comprehensively and properly and effectively, so that you collect the literature, you understand the literature, you paraphrase the literature, you compile and integrate the literature, and then at last you display the literature or represent it in a chapter or in integrated format with other parts of the article or the thesis. So it's important that the investigator should be selective, should be highly selective in selecting high quality reading materials. It's always important to go for high quality reading materials. For example, articles that are published by reputable peer-reviewed journals are important to search. The other thing is that the literature review can be time consuming. It needs a hell of time that the investigator should go for all different sources and says them thoroughly. This is time consuming, and thus the investigator should be patient enough, should be prepared that he or she needs time to understand all the literature relevant to his or her or his topic, his or her topic. Now we will talk about the importance of literature review. The important view that it increases the in-depth understanding about the research problem or the research topic, and in the sense that when we revise the literature review chapter and we see the references that have been used by the investigator, this will reflect to what extent that the investigator has grasped, has mastered the topic, and has understood exactly the important aspects and dimensions of the research topic. And also, through the researcher, you will come to find what other investigators, what other researchers have learned, what are the lessons learned by other investigators, by other researchers. And this is very important so that we can learn from these lessons which learned by others. It's also a one way or approach of refining the research design and the methods. And, also, it will help the investigator to identify potential research models or methods that can be used. Generally speaking, we can subdivide the literature review into three circles. For example, the general literature review, which represents the background about the topic, broad facts and basic facts and broad information and general information, background information, for example, about a certain topic. And then we go furtherly to conduct focused literature review in the sense that we focused on the important literature that are relevant to the topic. And then lastly, we need to go for the selective literature, which is represents the directly relevant literature review to the topic. And it's important also that we develop some sort of a guidelines for a plan of the literature review. You have to have some sort of mini plan of the literature review in the sense that you have to cite background reading and preparations, which sources you are going to use for finding the general literature or the background information about the topic. And then you have to go for the title to identify, for example, the key items that you need to focus. And then what are the possible sources to search, whether published data, whether, for example, bibliography, database, and the areas relevant to the research topic and objective relevant to your research questions. So these are very important guidelines so that you will be covering most of the literature that is relevant to the topic. Otherwise, you might be missing important literature, and the literature chapter will be defective. Then lastly, you have to carry out some sort of collation, some sort of compilation, and then organization of the literature review chapter, and where you will use the different literature, whether you use it in the background of the introduction, or whether you use it in the discussion, what type of literature are going to include, which literature are going to include in the background literature. And then we can talk about that important articles that are directly relevant to the research topic, of which we find describe it just as selective or similar to the your topic, may be saved in order to enrich the discussion of the research results. In other words, that similar articles, for examples, or published articles you come upon that are similar to your topic, you just keep them for strengthening and comparing your results in the discussion chapter rather than to use them for the literature review. And this means that you can use them in any part of the thesis or the article, but it is important to use them for comparing your results with the results of other investigators in the discussion chapter. We may use carding system, for example, to save the literature, or otherwise you can use hard diskette or CD or flash diskette to save the reviewed literature so that you can keep it for your use. Now we come to understand what is meant by summarization or summarizing the literature. When you carry out summarization or summarizing of the literature, this means that you reduce the length of a text, but is still retaining and keeping the main points as they are. In other words, if you have a literature, for example, of 10 lines, then you make some sort of summarization. You keep it for 3 or 4 lines. This is summarization, but the contents are still there, but you make it, yeah, you reduce the length of the text. In other words, while we talk about the paraphrasing means rewriting a text so that the language is substantially different from the original literature, while the content stays the same as the reviewed material. You go for certain published article in a journal or bibliography database of in a website or a textbook, you get the literature, and it's better to go for different sources, for different references, and to get what is there, and then you come to carry some sort of synthesization, digestion, and then completion all these sources briefly in your own words, using your own expression rather than directly quoting the literature. Paraphrasing involves reading something that other investigators have done, and then you carry some sort of digestion of the material or some sort of synthesization or integration of this material obtained from different sources. That's so it is better that you go for different sources, you get the literature, and then you make some sort of digestion, some sort of synthesis, some sort of integration and completion of the literature, and then you display them in your article or in your thesis. Such practice that reflect that the investigator has had in-depth or understanding of the material, and then he or she carried some sort of expression in his or her own words. When we talk about quotation, is an exact copy of the language from a source. If you do use a quote, you have to ensure to include the quotation marks and to cite the source from where you have got this literature and include the page number if possible. Quotations are not commonly used in scientific writing, and overuse of quotation can adversely affect the quality and content of your article. Now we talk about the excessive use of quotation reflects that you have not exerted any effort or understanding of the literature, and that as investigator you just carry out quotation and you have not carried any sort of paraphrasing, and this is something negative that you as investigator you have to avoid as possible. It's extremely important that you thoroughly understand. You have to carry some sort of in-depth understanding for the literature, and then you carry out some sort of synthesis and digestion and completion, and then lastly the paraphrased literature will be presented or displayed in the chapter. Now we'll talk about some types of information. This is important to understand, and that which type of information which we need to search, we need to find so that we can depend on them for answering our questions. There are different types of information, and it's helpful to have a good idea about between the differences between them when searching the literature, whether in a bibliography database or using the search engines or something. For example, this will help us to draw conclusions from the literature we find, and that we have some common terms used for classification of the literature review. For example, we talk about primary research, and this is research which is developed by the investigator from the proposal development for implementation of the research up to finalization of the report and publication of the article. Yani, in other words, it has not been done before. For example, such as a randomized clinical control trial for testing the therapeutic efficacy of a certain drug that can be used as antibiotic drug, for example, or preventive trial, for example, to test to what extent the certain new vaccine that can be used for protection against COVID-19 virus. Uh, Primary research usually focuses on a single topic. So the other term is secondary research. And here we use, the investigator uses the data that had been published primarily by other investigators or by other researchers, and then he or she develop a new conclusion for that data. And there is no collection of the original data. Instead, the researcher will depend on the data collected by the others. And secondary research includes publication like systematic reviews, or sometimes the investigator carries out further step in form of meta-analysis. That is, in the sense, conduct of reanalysis statistically, so that you'll come up with new conclusions. The gray literature, this term is used to describe information which is not published commercially or formally, or otherwise hard to find. And we can enlist some examples, such as government reports, if we are talking about national health policy document, for example, or strategic plan documents. These are gray literature that are not published commercially or formally. For example, non-governmental organization reports and thesis reports, for example, and theses that are accepted and kept in the libraries of the academic institutes, for example, technical reports of the many of the organizations, such as World Health Organization or United Nations Fund for Population, and also white and authoritative papers are considered as a gray literature. A few words about the peer-reviewed journals. The vast majority of reputable academic journals are peer-reviewed, and this is a type of quality control process that the submitted manuscripts are reviewed by experts and or consultants in the field, so that they will give their comments and they will give their critiques for the authors. And then authors may have to edit their manuscript or respond to any of the critiques that have been raised by the reviewers. If the authors or the investigator do not respond, the articles will be rejected. Thus, the investigator are advised to be keen to respond adequately to the reviewers' comments and critiques timely, so to avoid such rejection. Thank you very much.